What is up, everybody? This is the Wild Nutrition Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Heskett, and this is episode 110. 110, I believe. Yes, 110. All right. It is almost 2024. Wild to say that, guys. Still dealing with being sick a little bit, so I might cough a couple times during this podcast, and I don't have time to go back and edit this, so they're just going to stick in here. Anyways, hopefully it's not too much, but 2024 is literally right here. This is coming out on the 26th, so not the typical Monday, it's Tuesday. And we're going to talk about how to have success with your goals in 2024. Now, we're mostly going to talk about health and fitness goals today, but this can really be related to many, many different areas. And it was something we talked about on the webinar in the Lifts with Alex group, No BS Fitness and Nutrition Tips. So if you guys want access to that, we're going to be doing those more often. About the plan's once a month. We're going to adjust this along during the year. This is one of our 2024 goals. But if you guys want access to that link to the Facebook group is down below. So obviously listening to podcasts are awesome. I love you guys listening to podcasts, but those webinars, you get to interact with people directly. So myself, Alex, the rest of the LWA team, you get to interact directly with us. So listening can be great, but if you have questions, then there's like delay. Like you can send me a message on Instagram or TikTok or Facebook that to get back to you. Like sometimes it's like, hey, I have this question, I want to get the answer now. That's where those things come in handy. So one thing is to join that group, grab our free guides down below and start with that stuff and start taking action. All right, so we want to have success in 2024. How are we going to do that? Well, the first thing is we need to set a plan. And that plan can't just like all of a sudden get started on necessarily January 1st. So we need to actually plan it out a little bit and plan out a year and have something that's realistic. So if we're looking at, like, we just ended the holiday, so you might have had your Aunt Betty or Uncle Tom saying, we're doing carnivore, we're doing keto, we're cutting out all sugar, we're doing this. Like, first of all, we know those things haven't had success because those people have been doing it for a long time. And we need to look back at what you've been doing. If this has been something you've struggled with for a long time, have you actually had success? And defining success is, if our goal is weight loss, have you gotten the weight off and kept it off and enjoyed your life? If you kept it off but you hated life was miserable, and the only way you could keep it off is doing this damn diet and workout program that was unsustainable, then that wasn't success. If you got the weight off but they rebounded right away, then that wasn't success. So a lot of times I'll hear like, well, this worked for me in the past. Like, then why are you here struggling again? Well, it only works when I'm on it. That's a problem. So we need to create something where we're changing your lifestyle. And we're going to get to that point in a second here. But I like to look at the entire year. So before we can just like, we're going to start a diet, like we need to plan out and be tactical when it comes to planning out all of 2024. And this doesn't mean like down to like on January 22nd at 1 p.m. Like, we're not talking that, but we're talking about, okay, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Then we can break down each quarter. Like, what is your overall goal? Like, if your goal is weight loss or your goal is improving health, like say it's reducing your cholesterol, blood pressure, maybe it is getting in shape. Maybe you want to run a 5K or a 10K, whatever your goal is, it doesn't matter. But again, most people are going to be talking about weight loss. So first quarter, what's a realistic goal for you to lose in that time frame? And quarter is going to be 3 months, about 13 weeks. Okay, so if that's 12 pounds and you have a goal of 20 pounds, all right, so it might take you 2 quarters or about 6 months to lose all of that. And then we need to And you're like, well, that's 26 weeks. If you said a quarter is 13 weeks, it's 26 weeks. Like, yeah, we should make a plan for things taking a little bit longer, because if something pops up, as life likes to do, I talked about this on the Friday's podcast. You get sick, kids have something going on, work all of a sudden has last minute travel for you, whatever. Life likes to throw shit at you. So instead of being like, I want to lose 20 pounds, I'm going to do it in exactly 20 weeks. Instead, it's going to be like, I want to lose 20 pounds. I'm going to give myself about 26 weeks. And that gives me a little bit of contingency. But we still have that like end date. And so my example is last year, I was like, okay, I need about 12 weeks to diet. It took me 16 weeks. It took me 16 because I got COVID. We had vacation. This year, again, we have a vacation sometime in the spring. We're going to go see my brother in South Carolina. That's the plan, at least right now. So there's things that pop up, and you need to plan for them. You can't just be like, oh, well, I'm just going to pretend I can be 100% or that. If it's going to be challenging, don't put yourself in a bad situation. Like, be realistic. And that's the whole point of planning this stuff out, is making a realistic plan. Because if you're like, I want to lose 50 pounds in the next 6 months, like, oh, some people can do that, but that's really aggressive. And if you have 4 trips planned in that 6 months, like, that's really aggressive. Is it actually realistic, or are you setting yourself up for failure? Because there's nothing wrong with having a big, hairy, scary goal. Like, there's nothing wrong with that, but those goals should be still reachable, and we always want to reach goals. So when we're making this plan, we want it in a way that we have to try a little bit. If they can't be so easy, like lose 0.1 pounds per week. Like, that's so incredibly easy that you won't feel accomplished when you reach that goal. Because when you reach a goal, you get this sense of accomplishment, which is dopamine. Your body literally rewards you. Like, oh shit. Like, think about if you've gotten a promotion, you did well in something, whether it's school, you won a sports event. Maybe it is watching your own sports team win an event. If you're big into sports, I am not, but doing something yourself. Maybe you remember hitting that 10-pound goal. Maybe it is remembering that you did something hard. You didn't think you could run that 5K and you did the 5K. Or you didn't think you could do this hike and you did this hike. And you felt accomplished. Like, wow, shit, that was hard, but I survived. I did it. Your body rewards you like, yeah, congratulations. And it helps build confidence. So what we don't want to do is miss goals, because the opposite happens. You feel disappointment. You feel like a failure. And missing a goal here or there is not going to break you. But when that's week after week after week, that's a problem. Because all of a sudden you're just reinforcing, like, I suck, I'm a failure, I'm a terrible person, I'll never amount to anything. You think you're going to stick with anything if that's happening week after week after week? No. So if your goal, and I've seen this many times where there's a person, I remember years ago, she's like, I'm going to lose 30 pounds in 30 days. I know it's aggressive. Guess what she did not do? She didn't get past day 10 because she already missed this hyper aggressive goal. Like, just think about it. Like, you have 30 days to lose. That's a pound a day, which means by day 10, you need to be down 10 pounds. By day 20, you need to be down 20 pounds. There is no room for error. This person wasn't very tall. She was overweight, but she wasn't very tall. So it was not realistic whatsoever. Was not consistent with her exercise early on. Like, already had nothing was in place for her to be successful. So she just automatically went in like, I'm going to do this, and failed right away. And was like, see, I can't, and just reinforced that vicious cycle of like self-fulfilling prophecy. So we can't do that. We can't create self-fulfilling prophecies. We need to set up goals and what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking, but basically goals. Goals where you can accomplish them, and it breaks that self-fulfilling prophecy of like, see, I can do this. And that's why setting a goal of somewhere between 0.5 pound to 2 pounds per week can be realistic depending on the size of the person and everything. So for you, This is where the 1 pound a week thing kind of comes in. But at the end of the day, it's also like moving forward with your goals and not also like losing sight of the short term. So having short term and long term goals is important. So a lot of times we will look at the week to week and be like, oh, I'm up a pound from last week. Oh, I'm down 2 pounds. Oh, and there's all this up and down. But we want to make sure that over the course of time, long term, 3 months, 6 months, there's a general trend going down. And this is where you see success with people where they're not just focused on the week to week. They might weigh themselves, but they're looking at the long-term trend. And 6 months from now, they've reached their goal. Someone with short term, like, oh, I did this and I gained all this weight back. I'm just going to give up. And that's a problem because you're so short-sighted that you're not looking at the long-term effects of it. So setting a plan. And then it's also creates this time of there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Like there's an end date. Because being in one phase, chasing one singular goal can get boring, especially if there's like a long fucking way. If you have a significant amount of weight to lose, 100 pounds, sometimes you just need a fucking break. And that's okay. It is okay to like focus on something else for a little bit when you're being burnt out. Sometimes that actually helps you, remotivates you. You get more consistent in the gym. You push yourself harder in the gym. You're more consistent with your nutrition because you're no longer focused so much on like losing weight. You're focused on like, I just want to get strong as fuck. I want to build my endurance so I could run however far I want, when I want, how I want, whatever. I want to be able to hike whatever at a drop of a dime, whatever the fuck your goal is. You're just so focused on that, and then it just helps dial things in because you're chasing like, oh, if I don't eat well, then my performance suffers. I'm loving these gym workouts so much that I don't want to make my performance suffer. And obviously we can take this to the extreme when we don't want to do that, but it can be like it helps dial you in. And then next thing you know, you're like, fuck, I lost weight. It's like, yeah, you're no longer focused just on that. Your whole premise isn't just that. And a lot of times you do need those other goals. Like we can't just chase weight loss because it's super superficial. It's important, but ultimately it's nobody's long-term goal is just, I just want to lose weight because, well, just weight. Like there's other reasons behind it. Feeling better in your body, having confidence, fitting into your clothes, there's so many, improving your health markers. Like there's so many other reasons for it. So it can't just be weight loss. So with that comes working on yourself. So this is the hard, scary part of the whole thing. We need to work on ourselves. You have to work on your identity and figuring out who you are, who you want to become. Because if you don't, you're not going to be successful. If you're telling you, just today, I saw this from a few people that they went to their mother's or mother-in-law's house, opened up the pantry, and there's something called the diet pig in there. And as soon as the pantry opened up, it started winking at them. And I'm like, wow, that's fucked up. That's really, Alex actually did a video on it, so you can go to her Instagram and see it. But that's fucked. Like what? Open up the pantry and oink, oink, oink as soon as you see it. And you might be like, oh, that would motivate me to not eat. And it's like, okay. So negative reinforcement doesn't work long term. We need positive reinforcement. So you open that up and you're like, oh, I don't want to be a fat pig. Oh, I don't want to be a fat cow. Like, okay. So that stops you a couple times. But what happens when it doesn't stop you and you hear that oink, oink, oink in the back of your head? You're like, oh, I'm just a fat little piggy just eating my Oreos. I'm just a fat cow eating my Doritos. And all of a sudden, guess what? You start thinking that you're a fat little piggy. And if this language is a little triggering to you, I apologize. But that's what's happening. And that's why it's a fucking problem. We can't say that shit. You can't talk to yourself like that. It is negative, and that's going to cause you to not reach your goals because you're like, oh, I'm a fat, lazy pig. Like, what the fuck? Why are you talking to yourself like that? Well, like, would you say that to your friend? So those things do not work. They don't. They don't work because negative things like that are not good. Now, as a like, if you have really good confidence, those things can be a fun gag gift. But the way that was used, it was not a joke, guys. Like I could totally see my best friend like sending that to me, and I would laugh my ass off. But I'm not in that position. Like you can't do that to someone who's trying to lose weight. That's really fucked up. So we need to work on ourselves. You have to start talking to yourself in a way that you would talk to someone you love, your friend, your spouse, etc. Your kid. Like, would you say that to your kids? And if you would, we have a conversation we need to have. But would you say like, "Oh, you're just a fat little piggy"? Like, would you say that to somebody in person that you truly cared about? Probably. I know I fucking wouldn't. Like that's fucked up. That can really hurt someone long term. That can lead to eating disorders. So why are you doing it to yourself? You can't do it to yourself. You have to use that same language you would use for with someone else. It is important. And you need to catch yourself. This is not going to fix itself overnight. Because if you're saying these things, I'm lazy, I'm fat, I'll never lose weight, I'll never, like, if you're saying those things and you catch yourself, you need to change it. And this is where sometimes what I previously said, focusing on things other than fat loss, if you're like, I just can't get out of this vicious cycle of I'm always going to be fat. I just can never lose weight. Sometimes we need to get some other accomplishments under our belt. We need to fuel ourselves for other things with fitness, strength, hypertrophy, which is building muscle if you're not familiar with that term, endurance of some sort, whatever it is. And this doesn't necessarily mean you have to sign up for competition, but sometimes it is. Signing up like, I'm going to take this seriously. And then you start to see food in a different light. And all of a sudden, weight loss becomes much easier because now you have this different thought process around everything. Like, I can do this with my body. I know I can accomplish whatever I put my mindset to. I know how to fuel my body properly. I know how to enjoy some of these foods, but how also some of these foods affect me. So I'm going to have more moderation around foods that kind of negatively affect me. Maybe I get moody when I have them. I don't feel great. I don't sleep well. But I'm not going to eliminate them because I like them. And I'm going to have these other foods more often because I feel fucking fantastic on them. Great. Do that. And then all of a sudden you get to weight loss and you're like, oh, so all I have to do is like subtract portions. Because literally that's all it is once you get to high level nutrition. Once you get to that level where you don't, so the level kind of like where Alex and I are at, where we don't have all these negative associations with food, you can just adjust your portion sizes, especially when it comes to carbs. Like, okay, I'm eating 300 grams of carbs per day. Diet phase, we're going to cut that back to 200 grams of carbs per day. Then we'll just adjust when we hit a plateau. Like that's all we do. We just bump up or bump down depending on our goals. You're like, that seems way too easy. It's like, it fucking is. The hard part's what's going on in between your head, like in between your ears. That's the hard part. You got to deal with that shit first. And it comes from, as someone who's did this for a long, long time, and it doesn't lead you anyplace good. It comes from a place of talking to yourself positively, not negatively. Especially even if you're in the gym and you're like, I'm going to use all these negative emotions to fuel my rage during a workout. It doesn't lead to a good place. I can tell you because I did that for years. It's not good. Because what happens if, I can tell you right now, it's not good because if you fail your lift, you don't reach it, and you're like using all this rage and these voices inside of your head who've told you over the years, like, you're not good enough, you're never going to accomplish anything, you're a weirdo, blah, 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 you're a failure. And then you actually fail on something, guess what? All of a sudden, you just validated all those voices. It's not something you want to do because the level of disappointment is even higher. And I apologize if you hear my daughter in the background. So don't do that. You need, as someone who did this for years with lifting, Like all through college, that was how I fueled my workouts. And I can tell you right now, it's bad. Bad, 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 bad. You need to use positive reinforcement. That doesn't mean you need to listen to happy music. Like I still listen to heavy and death metal when I lift, but it's no longer fueling like this inner rage. It's like, no, like I just like the really aggressive stuff. As my best friend says, like the burn the world down type. Yeah, that's literally what I listen to. Like I like that stuff for my workouts. And it's not to say, so I feel better. And like working out helps reduce anger and everything else in me. It just, you get happy endorphins, and it also just helps like burn off some of that. I don't know. I just always feel way better. Like if I'm moody and miserable and I go and have like a half decent workout, it's like I feel amazing. Like last night I was like, ugh, fuck everything. And then I went and worked out. I'm like, I feel awesome. My wife's like, what the fuck happened? Like you were moody before you went. And like, yeah, I feel great. I like turned on death metal. I was like, this is awesome. So it's not to say you have to be like, oh, happy and everything. I know Alex does that with, it's like some of her music is more happy, which is fine. Like you do you figure out what works for you, and that's the point here, is figuring out what works for you and is a positive reinforcement. That's the key term. If you're like, well, that just works for me, the negative reinforcement. I can tell you most people who have that have not had success. Unless you have someone who's like yelling down your throat 24/7. Like, it's not going to work. It's not. We can look at psychology and research done on positive versus negative reinforcement. And if you're on your own, positive reinforcement is the clear winner in the long run. Negative reinforcement might give you short-term wins, but it's not. It's kind of like motivation. All of a sudden, it's there, and then it's negative. It has a negative effect on your goals. So you can't rely on, you can't use it. You have to catch yourself, and then it goes back to changing your identity. Changing who you are now into the person you want to become in 2024. Like, who is that person? Have you thought of it? Like, it's just a skinnier version of me. No, because the version of you got you in the position, like current you got you in the position that you are in now. So something I learned a long time ago, and this is still me to this day, I still truly believe this. If you don't look at yourself in the past and cringe at it, you're not growing as a person. If career-wise, professional world, your personal life, whatever it is, if you're not looking into your past and absolutely cringing at it, you are not growing. You are falling behind. So if you look at the past and you're like, oh, those days were so much better, you need to change things up and start moving forward, start working on things to move forward. So a quick example is like, I'll look at my content, and I love this with TikTok. I love /Shade. I'll look at my content from last year. It has like the on this day. I'll post a couple of them. I'm like, that's pretty good. But a lot of them, I'm like, wow, that is terrible. That is awful. Okay, I've grown a lot because I thought that was really good. That was much better than my content before. It's like, and this is, if you're like, well, that's negative. Like, no, that was the best I could do at that time. And now I'm looking a year from now. I'm like, wow, no wonder this didn't do well, because I know so much more now. Or, oh, that was actually pretty good. Why didn't that do well? Maybe it was timing. So I can look back and see that stuff. But it's the same thing. Like if you're looking into your past and you're like, I was so much better back then. Wow. Okay. So let's move forward. Let's start working so you can kind of cringe at your past a little bit. Be like, wow, like I've turned into a new, better version of me. Because the goal is to constantly be improving. And this is not to say like you need to improve exponentially overnight. It's 1% improvements over time. It is slow changes over time. And when you look at other entrepreneurs and a lot of other people, the people with the most success, they've been at it for a long time. Like some people it takes them a decade, 2 decades, but people will be like, oh, it must be nice. It's like you don't realize like some of these people before they get famous have been grinding for like 20 years, and then all of a sudden everything comes together. And you see all the time like the viral videos where someone gets overnight fame and then it kind of like fizzles out. Like they can't handle that. They don't have any systems. They haven't built up. They're just a person, and then all of a sudden it's like explode. Versus the person who can maintain, say, like fame and notoriety. They've grinded it out for decades before they get to that point, and not everyone, but there's quite a few. And I'm looking more as the entrepreneurs and not the some of the like more like celebrities. So like Gary Vaynerchuk, like there's some opinions about him out there, but you know, it took him a long time to get to the position he's in now, like decades, and he sacrificed a lot. Like he literally said like he sacrificed family, and he kind of regrets some of that. He's been, I believe he's been on record saying that, like, but it took him decades to get to the point. People are like, oh, he had overnight success. Like, no, it took a long time. Same thing with you. Like, it's not going to be overnight success. Like, why do you deserve the body of a fitness model or the body of someone super fit when you've put in 2 months of work for a body that takes a decade to build? And I think social media has really skewed our perception of what's feasible, because a lot of people are on social media and they have the success, but you don't see all the work that they put in. And so it's getting better in some areas, but a lot of people are not telling you what surgeries they're getting, how many people are on performance enhancing drugs. So I think the estimates are somewhere around 60% of social media fitness influencers, possibly up to 75%, are on some sort of performance enhancing drug. It's super common, guys. Like, people are always surprised. Like, it's super common. And that's not to say that there's many people. I'm one of them. Well, I would consider myself an influencer. But someone like Alex is not on any drugs. They're out there. But when you compare the body, it's like they're always less impressive. Like, there's a handful with really good genetics that are super impressive, but they're always usually less impressive. They get less notoriety than the people on drugs or they have the transformations just take longer, and then you see someone else and they're like, oh my God, the transformation was like overnight. It's like, that's a red flag. But also like magazines and the decades of the diet industry, I'm not even going to say fitness industry, diet industry, has just skewed everyone's perception of what is realistic. You just think that, oh, I should get 30 pounds off overnight. Oh, I should be able to lose weight super easily, like 5 pounds a week. That's realistic, right? Like, no, that shit's not. Because when you do the math, like 1 pound of body fat is, give or take a little bit, about 3,500 calories. 3,500. So to lose 30 pounds, you have to burn like over 90,000 calories. And if you're just working out at the gym like twice a week and you're not really getting that many steps in, like, how the fuck are you going to do that? Like, 90,000 calories. Like, I can't even visualize that. But that's 30 pounds of fat. So when you think of someone who has 100 pounds to lose, that's why this takes a while. Like, it takes it a long time, and you have to do it brick by brick. You're not going in with the excavator and scoot. That's liposuction. But liposuction doesn't work because people don't adjust their lifestyle. And that's the issue we're seeing with semaglutide and some of these weight loss medications, is they work, and they should be something that's done not as there's some massive side effects here. They should be used for people who don't want to do bariatric surgery, like unreversible surgery. Like, they should be used for people who could go that route, but use before going that route, or don't qualify for that, in conjunction with accountability lifestyle coaching, because you need to change your identity while on it, or you just go back. So there's a time and place for them. It shouldn't be the first thing you do. Absolutely not. If it is the first thing you do, that's a problem. But while on it, you need to adjust lifestyle factors, because the way they work is basically they're reducing your appetite. So as soon as you come off of it, because you need, and people are like, well, why don't you just come off of it? Well, there's side effects for one, but over time you need bigger and bigger doses, which gets more and more and more expensive. So you're getting, and the more bigger the dose, the more side effects you get. So it becomes less effective over time. You get more negative side effects over time, until a point where you get to dangerous levels. So at that point, you have to come off. And at that point, if you don't have lifestyle factors in place, you're just like winging it the whole time. Your appetite comes roaring back. You have no regulation. You kind of, a lot of people don't wean themselves off, and you just go right into your old habits. And so the weight comes roaring back on. Like if you didn't learn what foods you should be eating, how to balance out your meals, and you're just eating the same foods, you're just eating less portions. Well, now that your appetite's back, even if you try, but you're not actually doing portion control, you're not weighing your food, you're not measuring it, you're not doing a plate method, I'm just going to sort of eyeball it. Well, those portions slowly get bigger over time. I still do this to the day. I'm like, you know what? I need to double check and see what this portion size is. And I will still weigh food, even just to double check myself to be like, what it is, am I actually serving a portion, or am I serving a portion and a half? A portion and a quarter? What's the portion size? Because as a human, you and I are humans, our tendency is going to be to overeat. It's very easy for us to put on body fat. It's how we survived winters in the past. Sorry. Now we don't necessarily need to do that, and it's become a problem. But early on, that's how we survived. Now it's a problem. So, all that being said, you have to work on the stuff going inside your brain. And if that's a challenge, this is where accountability comes in. And yeah, this is going to be a little bit of a pitch for coaching. There it is, sales pitch. Okay. So, with that, if you're listening, I'm a coach, and I work with clients. So we're just going to get that out of the way. The link's down below if you need coaching. But let's talk about accountability and the psychology behind it. So we've seen the study where it showed that you need some sort of accountability. So if you just have a goal, like a New Year's resolution, you're like, I'm going to lose 30 pounds. The likelihood of achieving that goal is only about 10%, or 1 in 10 people will actually reach their goal. If you make a plan like you listened to earlier, it bumps up to like 25%. So it keeps increasing, but you never get to 50% until, you never break 50% until you get an accountability buddy. And accountability buddies can be tricky if it's a friend or family member. So this needs to be somebody who can give it to you straight, but you won't be insulted. So like, even as a coach, I won't coach my wife. I'll help her out with things, obviously, but to actually coach her, and when you need to call someone out on their bullshit, it can be very hurtful coming from someone you view as an equal, rather than like a student-teacher relationship. So think of like, if you have a coach, it's like a coach-athlete or a student-teacher type relationship, where if you have a coach, you are under them, learning from them, or an apprentice-master relationship, like that kind of relationship. Like, they're going to give it to you straight. You're going to be like, ah, fuck. Okay, yeah, I fucked up. But if you view yourself more like equals, then it can come off as hurtful when someone calls you out on your bullshit. This can, if it's a coworker or it's a friend where you don't have like a super deep connection. Because the problem is when it's, say, like your spouse, they know all your vulnerabilities and then they can easily hit that. And if they're not a coach, they can hit that at the wrong time and it can be very hurtful. When it's someone else, so I've coached family members I'm not close to, and we have that, like, technically you're my aunt, but in this relationship, we have that student teacher or master and apprentice type relationship where we're not super close. I kind of know some of your vulnerabilities, but I'm not so close with you. I can just like dive that knife in and be like, oh, I'm going to hit you in your weak spot when you're down. Like, nor would I do that. But sometimes if you don't understand coaching and you're trying to be accountable to someone, those things can come out and you don't realize you're doing it. So you want someone who's like not your best friend, but also not that friend. So you're trying to find someone where they're also like, hey, do you want to go to a happy hour? And you're like, oh, yes, let's do it. Like, that might not be the best friend for an accountability buddy, or it might be, especially like you want to skip the gym and go here to a happy hour. Oh, yes. You might need that friend where it's like, hey, let's, so we're going to we're going to skip the gym today, happy hour, but to make up for it, not to burn off the calories, but we still need to get our 3 workouts in. So if we're skipping the gym today, we have to make it up tomorrow. Like, damn it, you're right. That means I can't drink too much at happy hour, so I'm hungover. So you can't, like, we're going to go to the gym tomorrow to burn it off. Like, there's obviously these fine lines you have to follow. So all this being said, sometimes you just need to go ahead and find a coach. If you're like, I don't have these people in my life, or they're not really able to do that, then that's where investing in coaching comes into play. So with the research study that was done, they found when you have someone to hold you accountable, the likelihood of reaching your goal goes to 60%. So you break that 50-50, the flip of the coin. It's much better than trying to do it just on your own. Great. It goes up to 95% chance when you put some skin in the game. Like, you invest in yourself. So think of like how many free resources. And we saw this. We had 400 people download the free guide we put out for Black Friday. About 10% actually opened it up, and even less actually implemented it. That's free. So if you think back of like how many free courses have you downloaded in the past? I'm just as guilty as you. How many, not just health and fitness, across the board, how many things have you done? How many like cheap books have you bought and never read? Okay. Now imagine you buy a course for $500, $1,000, something expensive. All of a sudden you're like, oh shit, I'm going to use this. That's the difference. Now, obviously, you have to invest in a good coach and someone who fully understands you and your goals and everything, or mentor or teacher, whatever you, not even necessarily coach. Again, this applies to all areas of life. So if you're listening, you're like, yeah, but my goal is, to start a business. Well, maybe if you don't know business, maybe you need to invest in someone who knows more. Or maybe you're like, I started a business, but I don't know taxes. Well, maybe you need to invest into an accountant to help you with that, because they're going to know, they're going to teach you, and you're going to learn more. So it's not just like coaching. This is all areas. This year, it might be whatever you need to do, you need to invest into something. And you have to put a little bit of skin in the game. It's scary, I get it, but when you do it, it actually makes you come. And the scary part is, you're like, well, what if I fail? Well, are you going to let yourself? If you're already thinking like, what if I spend money and fail? Like, you're already out, so don't do it. But what if you invest and then you actually do it? Like, what changes? And you're like, oh, shit. So you need to actually put time. And this was one of the things we did on our vision board call. Was that Sunday? Yeah, it was Sunday. Not this is coming out Tuesday. So 2 Sundays ago, the 17th, we did that vision board. So one of my things was continuing education. So investing into myself continuing my education this year. I continue to do education, but I'm like, I need something a little bit more formal this year to level up a little bit more rather than just like podcasts and books. Like, I need something a little bit more this year for me. So that's one thing I'm telling you right now that I want to do. I want to invest into myself to help me. Because, again, if you're looking at it as an expense, like, oh, then it's not an investment. That's an expense. We don't want expenses. We want investments because that's going to help you move forward to become that you 2.0 that you want to become. If you want to grow as a person, sometimes it takes investing. And if you don't have money but you have a service, sometimes you can trade that. I have someone where she's like, I literally don't have any money right now, but I have a podcast and you can be the main sponsor on it. I'm like, great. We'll do that. How about we trade services? I'm the main sponsor. I'll coach you for free, and you talk about your journey with coaching on your podcast. Every week there's a little commercial for me. So that's kind of how we break things up. So if you're like, oh well, I'm there's always a way. If you have a service, you have a skill, just realize like you are valuable to somebody. And if you don't, maybe this is the year of learning a service or skill. So that can be investment of like, maybe you should learn how to do pottery, crochet, learn coaching, learn like you can start down something. So if you're listening, you're like, yeah, but Chris, I don't really have I have all my fitness goals. Maybe it's learning a new skill and figuring that out. And what is it? You want to take up archery. Cool. That's kind of hard to trade skills with me, but for fitness coaching. But people will be out there of like, hey, I want to learn archery. Okay, great. Whatever it is, maybe that is your investment of I'm going to skill up this year. I'm going to learn X. Go fucking do it. All right. Before my voice totally goes, I can feel it starting to go now. So I'm going to end it now. Hopefully this podcast was super helpful to you. If you have any questions, my DMs are always open and you can grab stuff down below. Obviously, our coaching link is down below. For one, if you're looking at hiring a coach for the new year, that's down below. That doesn't sign you up for anything. That gets you on a call so we can make sure that you are a good fit to work with us and vice versa, because coaching is a relationship. And if you're not a good fit, it doesn't work. It just doesn't. Or there's the free guides down below as well. You can grab those. You heard what I said about free guides, but if you're an implementer, or it's a great place to start. There's still a 1 in 10 chance. So if you're that, one person, great, go for it. I've met those people in my life. We had actually on this podcast, Clint was one of those people. He lost 50 pounds. You can go back and listen to his podcast interview here. I forget what episode. It's early on. It's I think it's in the 20s, maybe the 30s. You can go and listen to that one. He was one of them. He just implemented. He implemented slowly and wasn't perfect. He just worked on what he could when he could. But you can go and download those things, help you get started in 2024. And as always, if this was helpful to you, please leave a review, as that helps the show get pushed out to more people. Drop a 5-star rating. I see a bunch of you follow the show. We don't have that many ratings, so please, it's super helpful. Go give a 5-star rating or 4-star, whatever it is. If you're a constant listener, I'm going to imagine it's somewhere in the 4 or 5 stars. And if you're on one of the platforms that you can leave a review, please drop a review, as well as I do go through weekly and try to read whatever reviews are left, as it helps me build a better podcast for you, the listener.